Football is not just 90 minutes of running and kicking a ball. It is a psychological war disguised as a sport. And nowhere is that more visible than in the greatest comebacks the game has ever witnessed. Because when a team is losing heavily, the battle is no longer about tactics, stamina, or talent. It becomes a fight between belief and doubt, between courage and fear, between the voice that says it's over and a one that whispers, not yet. And history has shown us again and again that the teams who rise from the ashes are not always the most talented, but the most mentally unbreakable. Because the first thing that collapses in a comeback situation is not the defense or the midfield, it is the mind. As players begin to feel the weight of expectation, the pressure of the crowd, the fear of embarrassment, and the terrifying awareness that millions of eyes are watching them fail. And once that fear enters, legs feel heavier, passes lose precision, and decision-making slows. While on the other side, the team that is behind experiences something strange and powerful: freedom. Because when you are already losing, you have nothing left to protect. And this is where psychology flips the game on its head. Because humans perform their best when fear disappears, when consequences vanish, when the only option left is to attack, to risk, to believe. And that is why the first goal of a comeback is never just a goal, it is a psychological weapon. It tells the losing team that the impossible might be possible, and it tells the winning team that danger still exists. And in that moment, the entire emotional balance of the match begins to shift. The crowd grows louder, the players' body language changes, shoulders rise, heads drop. Time suddenly feels slower for the team in front and faster for the team chasing. And this is not coincidence, but neuroscience. Because pressure activates the amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for fear. And when fear takes over, rational thinking disappears, leading defenders to clear balls blindly, midfielders to hide from responsibility, and strikers to snatch at chances they would normally bury. While the chasing team enters a state psychologists call flow, where confidence increases reaction speed, risk-taking becomes natural, and the mind stops calculating failure. And history gives us countless examples of this phenomenon, from Istanbul 2005, when Liverpool, battered and broken at halftime, came out with nothing to lose and rewrote football history in 6 chaotic minutes, to Barcelona's miracle against PSG, where belief became contagious, spreading from player to player, from crowd to pitch, until even the impossible felt inevitable. And what makes these moments so powerful is not just the goals, but the emotional collapse of the opposition. Because humans are wired to protect what they already have, and when that security begins to slip away, panic sets in. And panic is the enemy of precision, which is why teams that defend a lead often stop playing to win and start playing not to lose, a subtle psychological shift that almost always ends in disaster. And this is where leadership becomes everything, because in every great comeback, there is always one figure who refuses to accept defeat, one voice that cuts through the chaos, whether it's a captain demanding higher lines, a goalkeeper urging calm, or a manager making a fearless substitution. These individuals act as emotional anchors, stabilizing belief when it is about to collapse. And belief, more than skill, is what fuels comebacks, because belief allows players to attempt passes they wouldn't normally try, to shoot from impossible angles, to press when their lungs are burning, and to run when logic says stop. And the crowd, sensing this shift, becomes the 12th man, amplifying every tackle, every interception, every shot, turning stadiums into pressure cookers where the opposition feels trapped, suffocated, overwhelmed. And this is why home comebacks are statistically more common, because collective emotion multiplies individual confidence, creating a psychological avalanche that is almost impossible to stop once it begins.
And yet, the most fascinating part of football comebacks is that they are rarely sudden explosions, but gradual mental breakdowns, where the leading team starts thinking about the final whistle too early, where players begin to glance at the clock instead of the ball, where small mistakes creep in unnoticed until suddenly the scoreline no longer feels safe. And when that happens, panic spreads like a virus, because fear is contagious, just as belief is contagious. And this is why elite teams train mental resilience as much as physical fitness, teaching players how to reset after conceding, how to breathe under pressure, how to stay present instead of imagining disaster. Because the mind, once it drifts into the future, creates its own defeat. And the greatest comebacks in football history are proof that matches are not decided by goals alone, but by emotional control, by the ability to remain calm when everything screams chaos, by the courage to attack when logic says defend, and by the refusal to accept the story that the scoreboard is trying to tell. Because football, at its core, is a psychological drama played at full speed, where momentum is invisible but unstoppable, where belief can outweigh talent, and where the greatest victories are not won with tactics on a board, but with conviction in the heart. And that is why fans remember comebacks forever, not because of how many goals were scored, but because in those moments we see something deeply human, the refusal to surrender, the power of belief, and the beautiful truth that in football, as in life, it's never over until it's over. And yet, even beyond belief and fear, there is another layer to football's greatest comebacks that few people talk about: identity. Because when a team is pushed to the edge, what truly decides whether they collapse or rise is how deeply they understand who they are. And history shows us that the most legendary turnarounds happen when a team reconnects with its identity in the darkest moment, when players stop thinking about the score and start playing for pride, for history, for the shirt on their back. Because identity gives purpose, and purpose fuels resilience. And this is why some clubs seem almost destined for comebacks, while others crumble under pressure. Because culture lives in the subconscious, shaping reactions before logic has time to intervene. And when a club with a history of miracles falls behind, something almost mystical awakens. The players feel it, the crowd feels it, even the opposition senses it, a silent understanding that this game is not finished yet. And that feeling alone can change body language, tempo, and confidence. And once belief transforms into expectation, the comeback stops feeling like hope and starts feeling inevitable. And this is where psychology becomes destiny, because human beings perform differently when they believe they are part of something bigger than themselves, when they feel chosen for a moment. And football, more than any other sport, feeds on that emotional narrative, turning ordinary matches into legends. And what makes these moments even more fascinating is how quickly control can disappear from the leading team, because dominance in football is fragile, built on rhythm and confidence, and the moment either is disrupted, everything unravels. Passes lose timing, defensive lines lose shape, communication breaks down, and suddenly the team that looked unbeatable begins to look human. And this is not coincidence, but cognitive overload. Because when pressure rises, the brain struggles to process information efficiently, leading to hesitation, and hesitation at the elite level is fatal. And this is why comebacks often come in waves rather than single moments, because once the mind cracks, it rarely recovers in time, and every attack feels heavier, every clearance feels desperate, every decision feels rushed, while the chasing team enters a psychological trance fueled by adrenaline, crowd noise, and the intoxicating sense that history is unfolding in real time. And in these moments, fatigue disappears, pain is ignored, and limits are rewritten, because emotion overrides physical exhaustion, allowing players to run further, press harder, and believe longer than science says they should. And this is where football transcends sport and becomes drama, because the audience is not just watching goals, they are witnessing the human response to pressure, to hope, to fear, to destiny. And this is why the final minutes of great comebacks feel different, why time seems to slow down, why every touch carries weight, because everyone senses that something irreversible is happening. And when the equalizer or winning goal finally arrives, it feels less like a surprise and more like a conclusion that had been building emotionally long before it appeared on the scoreboard. And what remains afterwards is silence from one side, euphoria from the other, and disbelief from everyone watching. Because comebacks leave scars as much as they create legends, teaching winning teams humility and losing teams trauma, reminding players and fans alike that no lead is safe, no defeat is final, and no moment is ever truly under control. And this is why football's greatest comebacks live forever, replayed across generations, studied by